Dr. Kyung-ho Park pressed his face against the small window of the transport ship. Outside, the Galactic Council station grew larger with each passing minute. The massive structure floated in the dark void of space like a metal city. Lights blinked across its surface, and ships of every size and shape moved around it like busy insects. Kyung-ho had never seen anything so big. The station was the size of a moon, built by dozens of alien races working together. Its purpose was simple: to try and stop wars before they destroyed entire worlds. But today, Kyung-ho was here because of a war that had already been going on for longer than anyone could remember. "First time seeing the station?" asked Captain Nari Kim. She sat across from him in the small passenger cabin. Her military uniform was neat and clean, and her eyes were sharp and alert. She had been assigned to protect Kyung-ho during this mission. "Yes," Kyung-ho replied. "It's incredible. How many beings live there?" "About 50 million, Nari said. "Representatives from over 3,000 different species. Most of them are trying to solve problems between their people. But this problem is different." Kyung-ho nodded. He knew why he was here. Earth had received a message 3 weeks ago. The Galactic Council needed help with something they called the Long War. Humanity was new to space travel, having only invented faster-than-light ships 10 years ago. Most alien races barely knew humans existed. So why did they want help from such a young species? The transport ship docked with a soft bump. Nari stood up and checked her weapon. "Stay close to me," she said. "The station is safe, but it's easy to get lost. And remember, you're representing all of humanity today." They walked through the docking tube and into the station proper. Kyung-ho's mouth fell open. The corridor was huge, with a ceiling so high he could barely see it. Aliens of every shape and color walked, flew, and slithered past them. Some looked almost human, while others were so strange that Kyung-ho couldn't figure out which end was their head. A tall, thin alien with blue skin approached them. It had 4 arms and large black eyes. "Dr. Park," it said in perfect English. "I am Guide Melix. The council is waiting for you." They followed Melix through corridors that seemed to go on forever. Kyung-ho saw meeting rooms where aliens sat around tables, their voices mixing into a constant hum of conversation. Some rooms had signs in languages he couldn't read. Others showed star maps with flashing red areas. "The red zones," Melix explained, noticing Kyung-ho's interest. "Those are the areas affected by the Long War. As you can see, it covers nearly half the galaxy." Kyung-ho stopped walking. "Half the galaxy? How is that possible?" 800,000 years of fighting, Melix said sadly. "The war began before most current species even existed. It has consumed thousands of worlds and killed billions of beings." They entered a large elevator that moved not just up and down, but sideways and at angles that made Kyung-ho's stomach feel strange. When the doors opened, they were in the council chamber. The room was enormous, with seats arranged in a circle around a central platform. Hundreds of different aliens sat in those seats, all looking down at Kyung-ho. An alien that looked like a giant insect stood up. Its voice boomed through the chamber. "Dr. Kyung-ho Park of Earth. We are High Chancellor Vex of the Galactic Council. We have called you here because we need your help." Kyung-ho felt very small. "I'm honored, but I don't understand. I'm just a scientist. What could I possibly do that your people cannot?" "That is exactly what we hope to find out," said another voice. This came from an alien that seemed to be made of living crystal. Light pulsed through its body as it spoke. "For 800,000 years, 2 great powers have been at war, the hegemony and the Confederation. Every attempt to make peace has failed." A hologram appeared in the center of the chamber. It showed a map of the galaxy with 2 different colored areas, red for the hegemony, blue for the Confederation. The colors swirled and mixed in complex patterns, showing battles that had raged across space and time. "The hegemony," explained High Chancellor Vex, "is a group of machine-based species. They have linked their minds with computers to become perfect logical beings. The Confederation is made up of organic species with powerful mental abilities. They can share thoughts and feelings across vast distances." Both sides are incredibly advanced, added the crystal being. They have weapons that can destroy stars. They have computers that can predict the future. They have ships that can move, faster than light itself, but they cannot stop fighting. Kyung-ho studied the hologram. The war zone covered systems he had never heard of, with names he couldn't pronounce. What started the war? No one remembers, High Chancellor Vex said. The original cause has been lost to time. Now they fight because they have always fought. Each side believes the other must be destroyed for the galaxy to have peace. We have tried everything, said a new voice. This alien looked like a large bird with silver feathers. We have sent our best diplomats. We have offered to divide the galaxy between them. We have even tried to use time travel to prevent the war from starting. Nothing works. Nari stepped forward. Why do you think humans can help? The crystal being pulsed brighter. Your species is unique. In all our studies of intelligent life, we have never encountered minds like yours. You think in ways that seem random, even chaotic. You make decisions based on feelings instead of logic. Most advanced species see this as a weakness. But perhaps, said High Chancellor Vex, it is a strength. Both the hegemony and confederation have become so advanced, so perfect in their thinking, that they cannot see new solutions. They are trapped in patterns of behavior that go back thousands of centuries. Kyung-ho felt a chill run down his spine. You want me to try and stop a war that has been going on for 800,000 years? We want you to study it, the bird-like alien said. Look at it with fresh eyes, human eyes. See if you can find something that we have missed. The galaxy is dying, High Chancellor Vex said quietly. Not just from the fighting, but from the resources being used to keep the war going. Trade has almost stopped. Peaceful species live in fear. If this war continues for much longer, our entire civilization may collapse. Kyung-ho looked around the chamber at all the alien faces watching him. Some looked hopeful, others looked doubtful, all of them looked desperate. I'll try, he said finally, but I'll need access to information about the war. Historical records, battle reports, anything you have. You will have everything, High Chancellor Vex promised. Captain Kim will remain with you as your protector and guide. You will also have a ship and crew at your disposal. As the meeting ended and the aliens began to file out of the chamber, Nari walked up to Kyung-ho. Are you sure about this? She asked quietly. Kyung-ho looked up at the hologram, still showing the galaxy split in half by an ancient war. No, he admitted, but if there's even a small chance that I can help end this, I have to try. He had no idea that in just a few days, he would discover something that would change everything. The Hegemony archive ship was unlike anything Kyung-ho had ever seen. The vessel was massive, stretching for kilometers in every direction. Its hull was made of a dark metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange geometric patterns covered its surface, pulsing with blue energy. It's beautiful, Kyung-ho said as their shuttle approached the docking bay. Beautiful and deadly, Nari replied, checking her equipment one more time. This ship has enough firepower to destroy a planet, but today, it's here to help us learn. Their shuttle landed in a bay that could have held a small city. Robot workers moved around them, loading and unloading cargo with mechanical precision. Everything was clean, organized, and silent except for the soft hum of machinery. A figure approached them as they stepped off the shuttle. At first, Kyung-ho thought it was wearing armor, but as it got closer, he realized the metal was actually part of its body. Half of the being's face was organic with pale skin and a normal eye. The other half was machine, with glowing circuits and a red sensor where an eye should be. Dr. Park, the being said in a voice that sounded like two people, speaking at once. I am Commander Thane of the Hegemony Third Fleet. I will show you our records of the war. They followed Commander Thane through corridors filled with screens and computers. Cyborg beings worked at stations, their mechanical parts connecting directly to the ship's systems. Some had replaced their arms with computer interfaces. Others had screens built into their chests, displaying streams of data. Your people, Kyung-ho said carefully. They choose to become part machine? Choose is not the right word, Commander Thane replied. We evolve. Organic bodies are weak, limited. By joining with machines, we become more than we were. We can process information faster, think more clearly, live longer. They entered a vast chamber filled with glowing columns that stretched from floor to ceiling. Each column contained thousands of data crystals, storing information from across the galaxy. This is our archive, Commander Thane said with something that might have been pride. Every battle, every strategy, every casualty of the war is recorded here. 800,000 years of perfect documentation. Nari whistled softly. How much information are we talking about? Approximately 400 trillion terabytes, Commander Thane replied. Every second of combat, every movement of every ship, every decision made by every commander. We believe that perfect information leads to perfect strategy. Kyung-ho walked up to one of the columns. The data crystals inside glowed like tiny stars. Have you used this information to try and end the war? Of course, Commander Thane said. Our best strategic computers have analyzed every possible scenario. They have calculated the most efficient ways to defeat the Confederation. They have also calculated the costs of continued fighting. Both suggest that victory is possible, but the price would be the destruction of most inhabited worlds in the galaxy. But you continue fighting anyway? Commander Thane's organic eye looked confused. We must. The Confederation represents chaos, disorder. They make decisions based on emotion and instinct rather than logic. They cannot be trusted to maintain peace. The only way to ensure galactic stability is through hegemony control. For the next several hours, Kyung-ho studied the hegemony's records. The amount of information was overwhelming. He saw battle reports from conflicts that had lasted for centuries. He read about weapons that could tear holes in space itself. He learned about planets that had been turned into giant factories, producing nothing but war machines. What struck him most was the precision of it all. Every attack was carefully planned. Every response was calculated to the smallest detail. The hegemony fought like a giant computer, processing variables and executing optimal strategies. I'd like to see the Confederation's records now, Kyung-ho said finally. Commander Thane's red sensor flickered. That will be difficult. The Confederation does not think like we do. Their records are not stored in computers, but in the minds of their people. You would need to connect directly with their memory systems. 3 days later, Kyung-ho found himself on a very different kind of ship. The Confederation vessel looked more like a living creature than a machine. Its hull seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting with a slow rhythm. Soft lights moved through its walls like blood through veins. Elder Quillith met them at the airlock. She was an ancient being, her skin pale and translucent, her large eyes completely white. When she spoke, Kyung-ho heard her voice not through his ears, but directly in his mind. Welcome, young human, her mental voice said. I am told you seek to understand our long struggle. Yes, Kyung-ho replied out loud, not sure if she could hear his thoughts in return. I can, she said with what might have been amusement. Your mind is very loud compared to ours. Come, let me show you how we remember. They walked through corridors that felt alive. The walls were warm to the touch, and Kyung-ho could swear he felt a pulse underneath his fingers. Other Confederation beings passed them, all tall and thin with the same large white eyes. None of them spoke out loud, but Kyung-ho could sense a constant flow of thoughts between them. We are all connected, Elder Quillith explained as they walked. Our thoughts, our memories, our experiences. When one of us learns something, we all learn it. When one of us remembers, we all remember. They entered a chamber unlike anything in the hegemony ship. Instead of computers and screens, there were pools of glowing liquid. Confederation beings sat around these pools with their hands in the water, their eyes closed in concentration. These are our memory pools, Elder Quillith said. Every important event, every feeling, every decision of our people is stored here, not as data, but as actual experience. Would you like to see? Before Kyung-ho could answer, Elder Quillith placed her hand on his forehead. Suddenly, his mind exploded with images and sensations. He saw the war through thousands of different eyes. He felt the pain of losing entire worlds to hegemony attacks. He experienced the fear and anger that drove Confederation forces into battle, after battle. But he also saw something else. Unlike the cold, calculated strategies of the hegemony, the Confederation fought with passion and intuition. Their battles were chaotic, unpredictable, driven by emotion rather than logic. Yet somehow they had managed to survive for 800,000 years against an enemy that should have been able to defeat them easily. When the connection ended, Kyung-ho staggered backward. Nari caught his arm to steady him. "What did you see?" she asked. "The same war," Kyung-ho said slowly, "but from completely different perspectives. The hegemony sees this as a problem to be solved through logic and planning. The Confederation sees it as a struggle for survival that must be fought with heart and soul." Elder Quillith nodded. "And both sides believe they are right. Both sides believe the other cannot be trusted with the future of the galaxy." As they prepared to leave the Confederation ship, Kyung-ho's mind raced with what he had learned. Two completely different ways of thinking, locked in eternal conflict. The hegemony, with their perfect logic and mechanical precision. The Confederation, with their emotional responses and intuitive strategies. But there was something else. Something that bothered him about both sets of records. The battles, the strategies, the responses. They all seemed familiar somehow. Not because he had studied them, but because they followed patterns he recognized from his work in physics. "Nari," he said as their shuttle headed back to the council station, "I need to run some calculations. Something about this war doesn't make sense." "What do you mean?" Kyung-ho stared out at the stars, his mind already working on the problem. "Both sides are incredibly advanced. They've been fighting for 800,000 years. They have access to weapons and technology beyond anything humans can imagine. So why hasn't either side won? Maybe they're too evenly matched?" "No," Kyung-ho said slowly. "That's not it. I think something else is going on here. Something that neither side realizes." He had no idea how right he was, or how dangerous that knowledge would prove to be. The human research ship Soul's Pride was small compared to the massive alien vessels Kyung-ho had been visiting, but it felt like home. The corridors were the right size for human bodies, the gravity was comfortable, and everything was labeled in Korean and English. More importantly, it had the most advanced computer systems that Earth could provide. Kyung-ho sat in the ship's main laboratory, surrounded by screens showing data from both the hegemony and Confederation archives. Numbers, battle reports, tactical analyses, and memory fragments filled every display. He had been working for 3 days straight, surviving on coffee and determination. Nari entered the lab carrying a tray of food. "You need to eat," she said, setting it down next to his keyboard. "And sleep. You're starting to look like a ghost." "I can't stop now," Kyung-ho replied without looking away from his screens. "I'm so close to understanding something important." "Understanding what?" Kyung-ho rubbed his tired eyes. "The pattern. There's a pattern in this war, but it's not what anyone thinks it is." He pulled up a new display showing a complex mathematical graph. "Look at this. I've been analyzing the timing of major battles over the last 100,000 years. At first, it looks random. The hegemony attacks here, the Confederation responds there, back and forth with no clear pattern." Nari studied the graph. To her, it looked like a mess of colored lines going in all directions. "I don't see it." "That's because you're looking at it wrong," Kyung-ho said excitedly. "Watch this." He typed commands into his computer, and the graph began to change. The chaotic lines started to form patterns, like music being played on a giant instrument. "This is something I learned studying chaos theory in graduate school," Kyung-ho explained. "Sometimes things that look completely random actually follow hidden rules. But you have to know how to look for them." Admiral Dong-Jun Lee's face appeared on the communication screen. He was an older man with gray hair and sharp eyes commanding the Korean space fleet from Earth. "Dr. Park, I hope you have some good news. The Council is getting impatient." "Admiral, I think I've found something incredible," Kyung-ho said. "But you're not going to like what it means." Explain. Kyung-ho took a deep breath. This war isn't really a war anymore. It's become something else, a self-running system that keeps itself going. Admiral Lee frowned. I don't understand. Think of it like this, Kyung-ho said, standing up and pacing around the lab. Imagine two chess players who have been playing the same game for so long that they've memorized every possible move. They're not really making decisions anymore. They're just following a script that was written long ago. He pulled up more graphs on his screens. The hegemony has perfect logical systems that can predict what the Confederation will do. The Confederation has intuitive abilities that let them sense what the hegemony is planning. Both sides have become so good at fighting each other that they're locked in an endless loop. But surely they could choose to stop, Nari said. That's what I thought too, Kyung-ho replied. But look at this data more carefully. Over the last 100,000 years, there have been exactly 4,1047 major battles. The hegemony won 2,123 of them. The Confederation won 2,124. The difference is exactly one battle. Admiral Lee leaned forward on the screen. That seems too precise to be chance. Exactly, Kyung-ho said. And it gets stranger. Every time one side starts to gain a real advantage, something happens to even things out again. A key commander makes a mistake. A weapon system fails at the critical moment. A new tactic is discovered that changes everything. He pulled up a detailed analysis of the most recent 1,000 years of fighting. The war maintains perfect balance. Neither side can win, but neither side can lose. It's like a machine designed to keep running forever. Are you saying someone is controlling this? Nari asked. No, Kyung-ho said slowly. I'm saying the war is controlling itself. Both civilizations have become so advanced, so perfectly adapted to fighting each other, that they've turned into biological computers. The hegemony processes logical responses. The Confederation processes emotional ones. But both are just running programs now, not making real choices. Admiral Lee was quiet for a long moment. If this is true, how do we stop it? Kyung-ho sat down heavily in his chair. That's the problem. Every attempt to make peace becomes part of the system. The war adapts to include peace negotiations as just another tactical element. It's like a virus that changes every time someone tries to cure it. He showed them records of the last major peace attempt, 50,000 years ago. The negotiations lasted for 3 centuries. Both sides made compromises, signed agreements, even started working together on some projects. But slowly, step by step, tensions built up again. Within 500 years, they were fighting harder than ever. What about the Galactic Council? Nari asked. They've been trying to stop this war for thousands of years. They've actually made it worse, Kyung-ho said sadly. Every time they interfere, the war system adapts to include their interference as a new variable. It's learned to use outside pressure as fuel to keep the conflict going. Admiral Lee looked grim. So you're telling me that 800,000 years of fighting has created a war that literally cannot be stopped? Not by conventional means, Kyung-ho admitted. Both sides are trapped in a system that's bigger than they are. They think they're making choices, but they're really just following patterns that were set long ago. Then what's the solution? Kyung-ho was quiet for a long time, staring at his screens filled with data. The only way to break a perfect system is to introduce something that doesn't fit the system's rules. Something truly random, truly unpredictable. Like what? Like human thinking, Kyung-ho said quietly. Both sides have studied every known form of intelligent life in the galaxy. They can predict how any rational being will respond to any situation. But humans don't always think rationally. We make decisions based on feelings, on hunches, on things that don't make logical sense. Nari felt a chill run down her spine. You're talking about using your own mind somehow. The war system can handle any logical input, Kyung-ho explained. It can even handle emotional responses, because the Confederation has been providing those for hundreds of thousands of years. But human consciousness is different. We think in ways that even we don't fully understand. That sounds incredibly dangerous, Admiral Lee said. It is, Kyung-ho admitted. To break the system, I would need to connect directly with both sides. Command networks at the same time. Feed human thought patterns into their decision-making processes. But the strain of interfacing with two alien consciousness systems simultaneously could kill you, Nari finished. Probably, Kyung-ho said. Human brains aren't designed to handle that kind of neural load. But if it works, if I can introduce enough chaos into their perfect system, it might break the loop that's keeping them fighting. Admiral Lee was quiet for a long time. Are you sure this is the only way? I've run every simulation I can think of, Kyung-ho replied. Every conventional approach, diplomacy, force, economic pressure, even destroying both fleets, just gets absorbed into the system. The war adapts and continues. The only variable that the system can't account for is genuine human irrationality. I need time to think about this, Admiral Lee said, and I need to discuss it with the Council. This is not a decision I can make alone. After the communication ended, Nari sat down next to Kyung-ho. Are you really willing to die to stop this war? Kyung-ho looked out the ship's window at the stars. Somewhere out there, entire civilizations were trapped in an ancient conflict they could no longer control. Billions of beings lived their entire lives knowing nothing but war. If there's even a small chance that this could work, he said quietly, then yes, I have to try. He turned back to his computers, already beginning to plan the most dangerous experiment in human history. Somewhere in the back of his mind, he wondered if his crazy human brain was exactly what the galaxy needed. The Joint Command Center floated in space like a strange metal flower. Built in just 2 weeks by teams from both the Hegemony and Confederation, it was a marvel of cooperative engineering. The station orbited the dead world of Keth Prime, where the first battle of the war had been fought 800,000 years ago. Kyung-ho stared out at the planet's burned surface as his shuttle approached the station. Nothing lived there now. The atmosphere had been stripped away by ancient weapons, leaving only a rock scarred by craters and strange geometric patterns cut into the ground by energy beams. Hard to believe it all started here, Nari said, sitting beside him in the shuttle. She had barely left his side for the past week, knowing that this might be their last conversation. Admiral Lee wasn't happy about approving this, Kyung-ho said. I don't blame him. If I'm wrong, I'll die for nothing. If I'm right, but the process goes badly, I could make the war worse than it already is. And if you're right and everything goes perfectly? Kyung-ho smiled sadly. Then maybe for the first time in 800,000 years there will be peace. The shuttle docked with the station. As they walked through the airlock, Kyung-ho was amazed at what the two sides had built together. Hegemony technology blended seamlessly with Confederation biosystems. Mechanical precision combined with organic flexibility. It was beautiful and strange, like nothing he had ever seen. Commander Thane was waiting for them, his cybernetic parts gleaming under the station's lights. Beside him stood Elder Quillith, her pale form seeming to glow with inner light. The sight of ancient enemies working together gave Kyung-ho hope. Dr. Park, Commander Thane said, the interface chamber is ready. However, I must warn you again. Our computers estimate only a 12.7% chance that your organic brain can survive direct connection to both our systems. And I must add, Elder Quillith said, her mental voice soft but worried, that our psychic networks are not designed for non-telepathic minds. The feedback could destroy your sanity even if your body survives. I understand the risks, Kyung-ho replied, but we all agree that this is our best chance to break the cycle. They walked through corridors filled with beings from both sides. Hegemony cyborgs worked alongside Confederation telepaths, their different technologies somehow complementing each other. For the first time in hundreds of thousands of years, the two civilizations were creating something together instead of destroying. The interface chamber was at the center of the station. It was a perfect sphere, with walls that seemed to be made of living metal. Cables and bioconduits ran across every surface, connecting to a chair in the exact center of the room. The chair looked innocent enough, but Kyung-ho knew it was the most dangerous piece of equipment ever built. The left side connects to our primary battle network, Commander Thane explained, pointing to a cluster of mechanical cables. Every hegemony ship, every weapon, every strategic computer is linked. Through this system, the right side taps into our collective consciousness, Elder Quillith added, gesturing to what looked like living vines with glowing tips. Through this, you will touch the minds of every Confederation being in our fleet. Kyung-ho walked around, the chair, studying the connections. What about safeguards? We have included emergency disconnection protocols, Commander Thane said. If your vital signs become critical, the system will automatically shut down. Though by then it may be too late, Elder Quillith admitted. Once the connection is made, you will be processing thoughts and data at speeds far beyond human capability. Time will move differently for you. Nari stepped forward. How long will the actual process take? Unknown, Commander Thane replied. Dr. Park's theory suggests that the war system can only be disrupted by genuine chaos, unpredictable human decision-making. This cannot be rushed or planned. I will need to follow my instincts, Kyung-ho said, settling into the chair. Whatever feels right in the moment, no matter how strange or illogical it might seem. Elder Quillith moved to his side. Are you ready? Kyung-ho looked around the chamber one last time. Representatives from dozens of species watched him through viewing windows. The fate of the galaxy rested on his ability to think like a human in a situation no human had ever faced. I'm ready, he said. The first connection came from the hegemony side. Mechanical tendrils extended from the wall and attached to points, along Kyung-ho's skull. Immediately his mind filled with streams of data. Battle plans, ship positions, weapon readiness reports, tactical analyses. Information flowed through his consciousness like a river of light. But this was just the beginning. The Confederation connections came next, and suddenly Kyung-ho's awareness exploded across space. He could feel the thoughts and emotions of millions of telepathic beings. Fear, determination, hope, despair. Every feeling experienced by the Confederation forces flowed through his mind. Then, for the first time in 800,000 years, the two networks connected through a single point, Kyung-ho's human brain. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Kyung-ho saw the war from every possible perspective at once. He was a hegemony fleet commander calculating optimal attack vectors. He was a Confederation pilot feeling the terror of incoming missiles. He was the central computer processing battle, data. He was the collective mind of an entire telepathic species. But more than that, he saw the pattern that held it all together. The war was indeed a system, just as he had theorized. Every move led to a countermove. Every strategy had a predetermined response. The fighting continued not because either side wanted it to, but because it had become a self-sustaining process that neither side knew how to stop. In that moment of perfect understanding, Kyung-ho did something that no logical being would do, something that neither side's most advanced computers had ever considered. He laughed. The sound echoed through, both networks like a virus. Hegemony computers tried to analyze the input and found no tactical value in human laughter. Confederation telepaths felt the emotion and couldn't understand why anyone would find humor in their desperate situation. For the first time in millennia, both sides encountered something they couldn't process or predict. Kyung-ho's laughter grew stronger as he saw how his simple human response was spreading chaos through the system. Battle computers paused mid-calculation. Telepathic networks flickered with confusion. The perfect balance that had maintained the war for so long began to wobble. Then he did something even more unexpected. He started to sing. An old Korean folk song his grandmother had taught him, about mountains and rivers and the simple beauty of Earth. The melody flowed through both networks, carrying emotions and concepts that neither side had programming for. The war system, faced with inputs it couldn't categorize or respond to, began to break down. For the first time in 800,000 years, hegemony and Confederation forces stopped following their predetermined scripts and started making genuine choices. In the interface chamber, alarms began to sound. Kyung-ho's body was shaking as the strain of connecting two incompatible consciousness systems threatened to tear his mind apart. But he could feel it working. The pattern was breaking. The cycle was ending. His last thought before consciousness faded was a simple one. Sometimes the best way to solve an impossible problem is to stop trying to be logical about it. Outside the chamber, Nari watched the monitors as every red zone on the galactic map began to flicker. Across half the galaxy, weapons were powering down, ships were stopping mid-attack, and for the first time in longer than recorded history, there was silence on the ancient battlefields. The war was ending, one human laugh at a time. The first reports came in 17 minutes after Kyung-ho's laughter echoed through the galactic networks. A hegemony battle fleet near the outer rim had simply stopped firing in the middle of an attack. The Confederation defenders, expecting the usual tactical response, found themselves staring at enemy ships that were just floating in space, weapons powered down. Nari watched the main display screen in the command center as more and more red zones on the galactic map began to change color. Each flicker meant that somewhere in the galaxy, fighting that had continued for 800,000 years was coming to an end. Dr. Park's vital signs are stable, reported the medical technician, a young hegemony cyborg whose organic parts were sweating with nervousness. But his brain activity is unlike anything we've ever recorded. Elder Quillith stood beside Kyung-ho's unconscious form, her hand hovering just above his forehead. His mind is still connected to both networks, she said, her mental voice filled with wonder. But the networks themselves are changing. The patterns that maintained the war are dissolving. Commander Thane studied his tactical displays with the same focused attention he had given to battle plans for centuries. But now, instead of showing weapon deployments and attack strategies, his screen showed something unprecedented. Peace. Fleet Admiral Korex reports that his entire battle group has received stand-down orders, he announced. But no one gave those orders. The ship's computers simply decided to stop fighting. The same thing is happening throughout our territory, Elder Quillith added. Our psychic networks are no longer focused on war. Instead, our people are sharing thoughts about rebuilding, about cooperation, about things they had forgotten during the long conflict. Admiral Lee's face appeared on the communication screen calling from Earth. Dr. Park, what's your status? He's alive, Nari replied quickly. Unconscious but alive. Admiral, are you seeing what we're seeing? The reports from across the galaxy? I am, Admiral Lee said, and his voice carried amazement that he couldn't hide. Every major fleet engagement has stopped. Ships that were firing on each other an hour ago are now talking to each other. A new voice joined the conversation. High Chancellor Vex from the Galactic Council. Dr. Park has done something remarkable. Our monitoring stations are reporting peace negotiations breaking out spontaneously in dozens of systems. Not formal, talks arranged by diplomats, but ship captains and fleet commanders simply deciding to stop fighting and start talking. On the medical displays, Kyung-ho's brain patterns began to shift. The chaotic storm of neural activity was slowly settling into more normal rhythms. He's waking up, the medical technician said. Kyung-ho's eyes opened slowly. The first thing he saw was Nari's worried face looking down at him. The second thing he noticed was that he was still alive, which honestly surprised him. How do you feel? Nari asked. Like I've been hit by a starship, Kyung-ho replied weakly. But alive. Did it work? See for yourself, Commander Thane said, turning the main display toward the chair. Kyung-ho struggled to sit up, still connected to the interface systems, but now at a much lower level. The galactic map showed a sight that no one had seen for 800,000 years. Green zones spreading across what had been the war's battlefields. Green meant peace. My God, he whispered. It actually worked. More than worked, Elder Quillith said. You didn't just stop the fighting. You gave both our civilizations something they had lost, the ability to make genuine choices. Over the next hour, reports continued to flood in from across the galaxy. The effect of Kyung-ho's intervention was spreading like ripples on a pond. Where his human chaos had touched the war networks, the rigid patterns that had maintained the conflict were breaking down. Ships that had been locked in predetermined battle sequences were suddenly free to choose new responses. But the most remarkable thing wasn't that the fighting had stopped. It was what was happening instead. Hegemony logic systems, freed from their focus on war, began calculating solutions to galactic problems like resource distribution and scientific research. Confederation telepathic networks, no longer channeling battle coordination, started sharing ideas about art, philosophy, and cooperation. Fleet Commander Zek is requesting permission to begin joint salvage operations with Confederation forces, Commander Thane reported, sounding amazed. They want to clean up the debris from 800,000 years of fighting and turn it into building materials for peaceful purposes. Elder Miran's battle group has offered to share their agricultural technology with nearby hegemony colonies, Elder Quillith added. Food production instead of weapon production. As the hours passed, the transformation accelerated. The war machine that had consumed half the galaxy was rapidly converting itself into a peace machine. Supply lines that had carried weapons now carried medical supplies. Ships designed for battle were being retrofitted for exploration and diplomacy. Most surprisingly of all, former enemies were working together as if they had been allies for centuries. How is this possible? Admiral Lee asked during one of his regular check-ins. How can 800,000 years of hatred disappear so quickly? Kyung-ho, now sitting up in the interface chair and looking much better, smiled weakly. It wasn't really hatred, he explained. Both sides had just forgotten how to think outside the war. Once that pattern was broken, they remembered what they actually wanted, which was never really to destroy each other. The war had become their entire identity, Elder Quillith added. When Dr. Park introduced chaos into their perfect system, it forced them to rediscover who they were beyond the fighting. Plus, Kyung-ho said with a grin, humans have a gift for finding humor in the worst situations. When I laughed at the cosmic joke of an 800,000-year war that nobody remembered starting, it helped everyone else see how ridiculous the whole thing had become. 3 days later, Kyung-ho was finally strong enough to leave the interface chamber. The connections were carefully removed, though he found that he still had a faint awareness of both networks. It was like hearing distant music, present but not overwhelming. As he walked through the station's corridors, he saw something that would have been impossible just a week earlier. Hegemony cyborgs and Confederation telepaths working side by side, planning a future that included both civilizations. What will you do now? Nari asked as they prepared to return to Earth. Sleep for about a month, Kyung-ho replied. Then probably write some very long reports about all this. And after that, he paused, looking out at the stars where former war fleets were now working together to build research stations and hospitals. After that, I think I'll help figure out what comes next. The galaxy has a lot of rebuilding to do, and it turns out that human thinking might be useful for more than just ending wars. 6 months later, Kyung-ho stood on the observation deck of the first Joint Hegemony Confederation research station. Outside, ships from both civilizations worked together to study the strange phenomena of space-time that their weapons had once exploited for destruction. He thought about the irony of it all. Humanity had spent so much of its short history fighting wars that seemed impossible to end. But when faced with a truly impossible war, the solution had turned out to be remarkably simple. Sometimes you just need to laugh at the absurdity of it all, and remember that there are better things to do than fight. The galaxy was at peace for the first time in 800,000 years, and it had taken less than an hour of human chaos to make it happen. Not bad for a species that had only learned to travel between stars a decade ago. As he watched former enemies working together to build something beautiful, Kyung-ho smiled. The universe, it turned out, had a sense of humor after all. You just had to be human enough to see it.